Chris, this is his fourth presentation. Again, you are, if you're lost, you are at Mythicist Milwaukee's Tuesday social discussion group. We have one new member. Thanks, Ali, for coming. And I think everyone else knows the drill. We are, or Steve as well. Sorry. We will create presentations from members. They're meant to be interactive, so it's okay to interrupt and say, hey, I can add to this, or I disagree, or break questions. It's great. Chris has done a great job presenting on the origin of curse words, global climate change, and privacy versus security. He's done a great job, so he's going for his fourth Super Bowl ring here, if you will. Puts him up there. Maybe if who's got three? Troy Aikman. If he got one more, you're Troy coming out of retirement. So welcome, Chris. This will be great.
As Brian had said before, this is a rather informal talk, so I have a little slide up here just for how I prefer to conduct my talks. Let's see if I can get this up a little higher. There we go. Okay, so first off, we're going to talk about what kind of informal trends there are in technology today, and then we're going to make some speculations on what that might mean for the future. After that, during this, we'll be defining some scope and covering some basic information. And as he said earlier, go ahead and interrupt me at any point if you have any questions. There's no problem there. But, what's up?
Yeah, can you use that laser pointer quite a bit?
If it's helpful, I'll use it, yes. I have quite a bit of text on some of these slides, so perhaps pointing out where I am would help. But I did write it like I was going to give a presentation, so it's written rather informally as well. And if it's your first time here, thanks so much for coming. I really do appreciate the interest that's developed from this, and I really enjoy giving these talks. So first, for some scope, let's define realism and futurism. I think it's important to stay realistic, of course, but that's not always possible. We live in a very uncertain universe. If you look into the past, it becomes less predictable. And what I mean by that is there's less information you can easily access or gather about it, similar to when we're looking into the future. And with some trends and studies that we've accumulated as a human race over time, just by writing things down and gathering information, we've made some speculation as to what may happen in the future. So a real brief synopsis of Moore's Law. I think that it's the defining trend that's still at least somewhat stable. All right, so Moore's Law is just an indicator that we've formulated during the 70s that kind of shows the logarithmic scale across which our platforms are becoming smaller and more capable of holding information. Each time on the logarithmic scale, it becomes twice as small, supposedly. Notice it's not a perfect trend. And it becomes twice as much data can hold.
By platforms, you mean computers?
Platforms, processors, things that use computing devices, correct. But here's, if we go back to that, here's a more accurate representation of what a logarithmic scale looks like. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that, but we just started hitting the exponential scale, is what I would like to point out. Last year, we just started hitting a point where we'll soon be creating technology that we might not be able to fully comprehend how it gets to its conclusions anymore. And I'll get into that in a little bit later. But on that point, let's talk about what technology is doing. It's automating things. So here's just a list of things you may have known are already starting to show trends of automation. So warehouse and distribution, they've got robots in the Amazon warehouses that can pick up carts and bring them to attendants. So still there's human jobs involved, obviously. And you've got food service and bartenders as well. Their positions can be replaced and automated by a robot. I'm not suggesting that that's good or bad. I'm just pointing out trends. Military devices with DARPA and the development of experimental unmanned vehicles has been a huge trend over the years, and controversial with unmanned aerial vehicles, obviously. With being a pharmacist or doing pharmaceutical research and distribution, a lot of that's becoming more and more automated, the testing process, the distribution of it, and even sometimes just the selling of products in general. So farming is one that we've known is becoming more and more automated as time has gone on. It's been great. It's been super beneficial to humans to have automated farms because now not everybody has to spend all the time getting food. We've got more specialized roles we can take. So obviously automation was great there. And it's continuing its trend to the point where the farmer could be irrelevant entirely. We've got cleaning stuff, so Roomba, that's pretty obvious, but household maids, laundry folding robots, cleaning robots, all sorts of stuff. Stuff you think of in the Jetsons and wonky and kind of out there. A lot of this stuff's going to be pretty bizarre. It's just whatever the consumer might want at the time. So as to see where it will go is pretty interesting. And similarly, you've got tellers and clerks and transportation, which you go to the grocery store, you've got an automated aisle now. You go, you could go to California right now and check out some of their automated cars that they're letting be tested. You may even volunteer if you're a citizen in one of those, or a legal resident in one of those states, to try out one of those cars. And there's different types of automation for cars too. They have 5 phases that they bothered describing. 0 being completely manned and 5 being completely unmanned. And there's different ranges in between, and we're working through those stages. So here are some jobs that you might not think could be automated, but started being automated. Being an attorney or a paralegal, some positions there are being compromised because it's all verbatim text, and a computer is better at analyzing that than most people. Journalists, a lot of the news that was written last year was generated by artificial intelligence looking for trends to post on. Surgeons, obviously we've got robots that can do surgery and help aid in surgery, but it could also be entirely automated depending on how evasive the procedure. Cooks and chefs I mentioned earlier, and teachers for online learning based off of other algorithms developed personally for students so that they could learn better in an individual system for them. So, I mean, yes, it seems advantageous, but it kind of depersonalizes a lot of things, so it could be looked at as rather negative. Next up, we've got jobs that are starting to be automated. They started last year and are continuing this year. Accountants, bus drivers, cashiers, credit analysts, loan officers, roofers, and telemarketers are jobs that you may see dwindling and doing poorly in the following year. I am not a stock advisor by any standard, nor do I know the economic trends, but I'm telling you that these jobs can be done by a machine and potentially for cheaper. Now, to the first question. We're right here.
Back to bus drivers, they're being automated now?
There's testing for that right now. There's places like, I believe Google has a fake city that they developed to test driving buses around recently. So that's one of the things you should see on the to-go jobs eventually. I don't know when any of this will be implemented, and I emphasize that this is very speculative, but at the same time, definitely a possibility and definitely looks like it's a trend. Okay, James, yes?
It's not too dissimilar from like the semi-automation with OTTO.
Yes, I've heard about that, where they're testing out long-distance transportation with 18-wheelers and such, because nobody, well, I wouldn't say nobody, but less people would enjoy being in a vehicle for that long. And sometimes having an automated system that takes over when they're sleeping, like I said, I think that's either a Class 3 or a Class 4 automated system. Yeah, so, okay. So here's the question for you.
When we say that they are being tested, where are they being tested? Are they being tested on the regular roads or other drives that are just on the...
Like I said, some states are allowing limited use of semi-autonomous vehicles on freeways and well-mapped, well-graphed roads. And if you live in California or the states that are offering those things, I'm not an expert on this, but I do know that I've read some things on that.
There is something that the guy who died with this not Uber, the other car, Tesla car, I mean, they are semi-automated in a way that they would stop and they would, I mean, in many...
and they'll keep driving. They'll keep driving on the GPS as best they can. Yeah.
Is that if you go back and read when the robots, I used to say robots, came back and said, oh, after 15 years, robots will do everything, and there are some very much, until unless we say, okay, they are in some production phase in a way that, you know, in business production way, then I think these are still experimental. We can say.
Yes, and I wouldn't bother personally putting a time scale on there with any relevant certainty, but I would say something like super optimistic 7 years we'll start seeing some sort of regulation, maybe not in the United States, but somewhere where they'll have automated vehicles.
They are already experimenting with flying cars.
Right. Well, we've had models for flying cars for a long time.
That's what I was going to say.
Yes, we've had models for those kind of things for a very long time. They're just, well, they're hard to implement when you rely on the user to be a good flyer. So if you're looking for everyone to fly, it's probably better to let it have some level of automation.
They said they will be by end of this year, I think.
Yes. Well, no, you could buy a car that transforms into an airplane right now for $500,000 or so if you wanted to, but they are custom built, like 16 exists for you, you know, and they're purely conceptual, and you'd still require having a pilot's license and a driver's license to operate the vehicle. So it's not for everyone. So yes. But anyway, so here's my first question for everybody, and I'll have a couple more questions at the end, but this is my intermediate question, and feel free and delve in as much as you want on that, and call me out for my conclusions, because I think that we can automate any job. There is no job that we could not automate. Any opposition there? I know my father has some.
It depends how they define automation.
Well-
Totally dependent? 100% automation?
100% automated, yes.
Oh, here's my example, my counter to even if everything is automated, there will always be a need for a token, at least a token human expert for their feedback. So everything could be automated, but they'll say, we still want a human here. What's your idea on that? What's your opinion on that? And it might be totally worthless, but it'll be there for political correctness.
And that's assuming that we don't develop a system that could automate what the human component is as well. That's assuming there isn't some sort of algorithm or artificial intelligence that could easily predict what a human's action would need to be. But now that's far in the future. That's extreme speculation based off of whether or not we even make it there. So.
Intelligence would be that, gathering. If you have an opponent, would be hard to do. Like the deep blue people can beat like the grand chess masters, but you don't yet have like a bridge program that the best bridge programs do not. They always lose to the best bridge players because they're not able to pick up the deceiving acts.
Well, that is nuance, and as far as I know, that's an extremely complicated human process and would be very hard to emulate with the technology we have now. We have to define what that would be first before we could program it.
Is there anything yet which has been 100% automated? Even when you say automated, let's say, for example, a grocery store checkout. We still have a person when the machine stops working.
Well, then, if there are some examples of what a fully automated system could be, but right now, economically, it's not. I'll get to you in the back in just a second, then we'll go to Fritz. I'm not 100% certain that anything is fully automated, but I know that entire chunks of processes when it comes to not necessarily transportation, that's the next step. If we could just say transportation is not involved in this and we just have facilities for things being produced, those have been automated for a long time. You know, you buy taffy, some guy dumps the equipment or dumps the stuff into a vat, and some guy puts some wax wrapping paper on a scroll, gets a whole roll of that, and then the system does itself and it creates the process. That, I mean, if anyone's watched any How Things Work shows, that's what they like to go through on there. That's one of the reasons I'm always fascinated by automation. But you in the back, sir.
How electronics are assembled without a human being ever looking at them or touching them? That's been automated, started in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's why one reason is so cheap.
Well, there's still a direct component of the human in the making of the thing entirely. Obviously, somebody has to design it. Nothing has been designed entirely by a machine yet. That's what to my knowledge. Right. Yes. well, sorry, Fritz was next. So let's go in order, courtesy order,
Sure. I was just going to say, and you just mentioned it as well with the idea of nuance, because I was going to bring up determining what would be the consequence or penalty for a certain act, depending on certain circumstances and.
It's hard to tell. I think I'm going to go over what I see coming next after this point right here. So I'll get to that right after that. Okay.
I was just going to say, to the bridge example, I think I read recently that someone's starting to do AI for poker, and they're doing pretty well with it.
Yeah, it is just a matter of exposing a predictable system to any sufficiently complicated general intelligence multiple times, and it can learn and adapt through the algorithm machine learning, which is just keeping track of the interactions between the two. Now, when it comes to games like Bridge, you're right. There's a lot involved. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of components that would be rather difficult for a computer to grasp. I've noticed in my time of just being a gamer in general, I can't find a digital version of Mahjong. They're all the tile stacking game. If you wanted to play a multiplayer online Mahjong experience, in English at least, you're not going to find it. There isn't a big enough target audience for that to get made, but it isn't a matter of programming difficulty. And it's all a matter of exposure to data. If you gave it enough data, it should be able to make some statements to become a better player like AlphaGo did, if you've heard of that example.
Well, I would say, especially when it comes to production, automation is good at eliminating some of the lower skilled tasks.
And that's what it will and is currently being used for. That's its primary purpose right now.
However, what it does then is it adds on more labor in the sense that maybe less labor. We have to have higher skilled maintenance workers, engineers that keep the automation.
And you'll see that trend as well as a lower population in more wealthy countries.
And to Brian's point, like the self-checkout line, automation, there's a problem with scamming. The automation, the self-checkout line goes on wait, so you can scan a candy bar.
Well, these are brand new processes, Yeah, they've just started being implemented. In fact, the pick and save that was in Brown Deer, I think before they closed, they got rid of the self-checkout because no one used it.
Well, I'm just saying,
It depends on who's using it. There are some places that only have self-checkout, and I believe you're right. Yes, scamming might be difficult, but RFID chips or an understanding of what the produce is just by visual, because if you have programs that can identify these are bananas and this is how much they cost per pound and all that, it's hard. It's a hard system, but you can do it. Yeah.
An RFID chip to a 50-cent candy bar is a terrible cost.
If the RFID chip is the size it is now, correct. We're assuming that it stays the same size and isn't instantly producible at a nano scale.
Talking about the cost. That's why you'll never.
Right, for cost of production, if we can have a radio frequency indicator chip, and this goes along with the trends of things becoming smaller and being able to do and store more, if we consider that the RFID chip as the size it is now would be about a 16th of the size in 4 years based off of somebody putting in that effort and doing the research to make RFID chips smaller, then you could make tens of trillions of RFID chips for cents a day, and it wouldn't matter, and no one would care. But that's a matter of size and practicality right now. So,
your job's in the arts, right? Like, ballet.
yes, and I think that's
Fashion. I think that's impossible.
right. And in some ways you're right, but in other ways, given that a computer can analyze what it is that we find beautiful, and we can show it and program it and teach it those things, I'm not sure it couldn't emulate it just as well if it had the quantifiable things that make.
Like in sports, the hot man, imagine what it was like to catch that ball. I mean, the human component is needed. I don't think you'd root for robots to do it.
I'm not sure. It depends on how cool those robots are. That's what I gotta say. They gotta have all sorts of cool stuff. All right.
I'm following a little bit along Brian's line, going maybe another step further. Stay-at-home mom, therapist, not a physical therapist, but the
Right, and those human-to-human connection jobs will be the last to go, and if they ever go, you know. I always feel like genuine human connection, obviously you being here and me being in front of you, is great. I really like it, and I don't want that to be automated necessarily. I think there's a lot of cool things that we have to offer as a society that, even if they were automated, we'd still do the normal human stuff just because we could. So, I'd like to move on to the next half of my presentation, and there'll be a lot more questions for you at the end. This is just question 1 of 5.
Is that horror destination?
All right. So this is how I kind of see things playing out, or at least a range of probabilities. You can't, like I said, you can't do anything with certainty, but I can make some educated guesses. So, number 1, option 1, the world ends. Option 2, we enter an age of abundance. And option 3, something like the singularity or the singularity. There's a lot of applicable terms for it nowadays, and we're not really sure what it means, but I'll go into each one of these in a little more depth, and then we'll get to those questions. So here are the bad scenarios, basically. We lose control of automated systems, and the technology becomes the enemy of mankind. So the thumbnail for this presentation is the Terminator. And I couldn't agree more. That's a real threat. That's a real problem. If for some reason we had our automated systems turned against us, hackers and the like, or a virus that could disable them all, you know, that would be problematic. Yeah, so the virus that could disable them all here. Humanity damages or destroys its current computer systems and just doesn't recover or does not recover quickly. And that's an actual possibility. So, yeah, warfare, biological warfare, pollution going rampant, all sorts of different possibilities as to what would cause these things. And of course, the worst case scenario, nobody's around for the other options, which would be the worst case. So here's scenario 2, and boy howdy does this look optimistic. I'm going to tell you, I feel like I made it a little too optimistic. But technology and automation makes humanity advance significantly. Problems like pollution, longevity, and hunger become things of the past. These are all speculative, obviously, and whether or not they be worked on at the same time or solved at the same time, or even fully solved, they just become less prevalent issues. They become the forethought of society instead of the primary drive to continue forward. Is just a struggle to survive. Seems like that would dissipate at least. Another thing that would play a major role in how our societies would operate from this scenario is asteroid mining. If you have better forms of resource acquisition and energy acquisition, then what's the point of money? If we can have as many resources and as much energy as we need, the idea of monetary influence either becomes significantly strained or disappears entirely. Similarly, if you have the ability to create anything that you need on demand with 3D printing and the like, even software that can be customly created by an artificial intelligence just for you, the point of branding seems to dissipate. You don't really need brands for things anymore. And then obviously speculative, like I said. But and the final thing here, or the final 2 things here, are people will have excess of time. And so they'll be able to enjoy things like hobbies, arts, science, philosophy, and even the jobs that they want to keep done by humans. At some point, a human-done job will be a novelty. So if you have human-made coffee, you'll be like, well, this was done by somebody's hand, so I'll pay extra for it. Or if the value system dissipates entirely, that might not be the case. They might just do it for fun, like I grow my own coffee for fun. You'll have time for that. And finally, the more advanced stuff is with nanotechnology, brain-computer interfaces, reasonable immortality, I call it, which is within the scopes of space and time, meaning the universe could end. And, of course, traveling throughout space-time, going to different worlds, traveling amongst the stars. Now, these are far-fetched dreams, obviously, perhaps, but we don't really know until we continue on this exponential curve. And that's, like I said, that's how I see things going. It's on those trends. And finally, we have the singularity, which is a multitude of options, honestly. It's just when the lines between being a human and being a machine become blurred, and what it means to be conscious is hard to define. These instances come up when we integrate technology into our bodies. And I know the word cyborg is a little more extensive than that. The actual definition is extremely broad. Wearing glasses or clothes makes you a cyborg. So that's not quite right. When I refer to the term, I'm talking about adding pieces of intentionally designed technology, whether be it bioengineering or physical metal and all sorts of other small robotics. Those things would be cyborg, and as well as making something that can emulate a human consciousness on a computer, or something that could have the human consciousness uploaded onto. I don't know that those are possible, but if they were, this is the scenario they would fit into. Here's the other parts that could happen with the singularity. You could have a computer intelligence grow beyond the scope of human comprehension. Last year, there was a computer system that was a neural network of 10,000 computers. It's designed by some 100 different associations working together to create this experimental system to try to solve a problem. I'm not sure if it was an economic problem or a physics problem. I don't recall which one they put it in the equation for this specific instance. But last year, the experiment was done, and the result was they have no idea how it got to its result. It spent 2.5 days running its process, and when they asked it to explain its work, it spent about 2 months trying to figure out what it did in those 2 days. So that means there was a black box, meaning the people who created the system could not look at why their system gave them the data and the result that it did, though they tested the result in the system and it seemed to have come out correctly. So it took them 220 terabytes of data, which is not even how much the system had on it, in text file, to explain its work. And it would take years for physicists to pile over how it got to its conclusions. So at this point, we're already experiencing the same black box issues with the human mind as we are with the neural network machines that we're creating. And finally, this is disadvantageous, or it could be. An artificial intelligence could have an exponential growth in its ability to learn. It could program itself to program itself better, and program that program to program better, and of course hypothetical. But if this were to occur as well, I'm not going to put any money on anything there. That could be great. That could also be terrible, because it could multiply as many times as it felt necessary. It could disregard the fact that we were its creators. It could reprogram itself in any manner. Any manner. I might have said matter. But putting it that way, we don't really know where that's going to go. A lot of people say it would be bad. I'm not going to put my money on any of those. So that's the scenarios. And here are your last questions for the night. And then you can ask me anything you want. First off, which one of the scenarios or options do you guys think is the most likely? And it's a little narrow. I know maybe I'm not encompassing everything. That's why there's 5 questions. So think of the scope that I'm giving you there with which options or scenarios. So there were the 3 options: the world ends, we have an age of abundance, or we enter a singularity. Those are the 3 that I've proposed. And within those, there are sub-scenarios, and I gave some broad explanations on what those might be. So what do you guys think?
I would say the second one, or, so number 2, or what I'm going to call scenario 2B, which is the scenario where automation basically makes human labor unnecessary, and the people in control who own the businesses gain further and further leverage, and it becomes basically a modern-day feudal system.
I had this conversation with my friend Ruben, who I wish had made it today, earlier, and he proposes that as an option as well. And as I said, I left them relatively vague in terms of their inevitable outcome, just possibilities that we might foresee coming. And that is absolutely on the spectrum, and maybe more so than it was a year ago with the current president.
What does that mean?
Why do you think it would be feudal system and not the arts, and people will have more time, society will be more democratic?
Well, so there's the trend of a rising gap in inequality. The rich are getting much richer, poor are getting poorer, and that's basically the effect of leverage where, in this country, for instance, we can outsource other countries, and that gives the people who own the businesses more leverage. They can basically, they have more power, more control. Automation would kind of potentially make that process somewhat exponential, so that the people in control have even more power.
And then the fact that it's exponential with all of these things, or at least something can get picked up in the swoop of the exponential curve of the data flow, or the way data is going, and it might change drastically. It might be extraordinarily fast. I'm worried about stability in general. I think that'll be a trend, but it won't be long-lived because that's the trend of exponentials. They're not long-lived. They're just a little.
Science, and I incline more towards this. People would have more time and more for science and philosophy. The reason I'm not saying this, everything is possible. First,
Right.
we don't say never, never. If we see the trend of technology, I think with the internet is like printing press. It's too soon, but it's the gap we see, the south and north gap in the country is decreasing. Will have average lifespan is a lot better. I think personally more inclined to that.
Yes, and I agree that that looks promising, but that assumes that there's a civilization for that to benefit that. You know, you can come up with these advancements and then we wipe ourselves out. What would that?
That's so far.
Well, it's good news. Violence overall has gone down quite a bit, but Frazier in the back.
I think we will wipe ourselves out because if you look at the past, it has happened many times. Many times.
Well, I think it's totally possible. I think it's totally possible.
Europe, and then we built, they built it up.
No, we didn't wipe out. If we wipe out, we wouldn't be here today.
Say what?
You damage yourself and rebuild.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
a complete wipe.
But
Oh no, it's not going to be a complete wipe. I think we'll always.
So that leads me on to the next part of the question, actually. But if you have another one, I'll indulge. What's up, Jim?
I can't see any progress that humanity has made that the leaders of a certain movement shared willingly with everybody else.
Well, that's the nice thing about these trends is it doesn't particularly matter what they think. As long as they don't blow everyone up, these trends will continue because it's just part of the market and part of the way people want. If some option exists that's better, aren't you going to go buy it if you can? This laptop's nice. I got it last year. I like it. But if someone were to say, hey, there's a real good deal on this laptop and you can afford it, I'd buy it. That's just how it works. And as long as that mentality of human greed continues to exist, this process should continue to move forward.
The leaders make the money.
Well,
Themselves from everybody else who's buying them.
lots of people make money. But you're right in the sense that there's a plutocracy right now and that most of the money is in the hands of the wealthy. But the thing is at some point, it just doesn't matter how wealthy they are if your bottom bar is fantastic. If your worst off citizen is doing really well, who cares if the other guy's doing super, super fantastic? You're doing fantastic. No, I mean, greed drives you to want to work harder to get that, but...
I agree with that, but I also think you're overlooking that humans can make artificial social constructs. So even though the bottom bar is doing so good, the top bar might actually they might make an artificial social construct that tells the people that are doing fabulous that they're not doing good.
It's hard to establish an artificial social construct when you don't have 99% of the people backing you. Social constructs are usually driven not only by monetary influence, but they're also driven by preference of the individuals who define those cultures, and that is actually more important than the financial influence.
let us see if Bill Gates didn't make money. That's okay. He made a lot of money. But how much the life has become easier for other people?
Right.
This is the big revolution. So if somebody makes money, okay. Until unless we have incentives, people won't come up with new ideas.
Well, some of the incentive can be, I know for myself, and usually I don't throw my own opinions in these things, but for myself, I am not driven by any of those incentives at all. I am driven solely on the fact that I'm interested to see where it's going. And that's it. I would like to see where it continues to go.
But then everyone has to be like your Bertrand Russell.
Yes, but
Must be a civilization.
whether or not they want to be is we're not forcing them to change their opinions. It's just how the trends are going to go. By the fact that things are going to be more easily accessed and information will eventually be more solidified on the internet, there'll be some cohesion that will occur from that, and hopefully that'll mend those wounds that we've had on each other. So let's hope that works. Fraser in the back again.
Doesn't it, I don't know, I think we're actually more competitive now than we've ever been in the past.
Well, competitive is not bad. Aggressive is bad. Competitive can be good.
Aggressively competitive.
Well, yes, but dangerously, extreme, any extremism. So when you're extremely aggressive, you're willing to go through all heck, no matter legality, whatever it is, to get what you need. Because that's extremism. It will function that way. But aggressive nature used constructively is perfectly fine. And also, I don't know that I could control that or moderate that, but the society we live in mostly has that, to my knowledge, from what I've seen. Again, that one's really my opinion. That one has less data backing it than anything so far. So let's go on.
The feudal system would be like a benevolent one, right? Because
I don't
you're
know.
saying that, but right now, like, yeah, we have a wealth inequality, but I mean, like, even the poorest American lives way better, is well above the average of the world.
And globally, poverty and inequality have been diminishing across the world, with the exception of war-scorn or torn nations. With those exceptions. So let's go on to the next question. Do you think that there are other ways those scenarios could play out? I don't know if I phrased that the best way, but realistically what I'm asking is, you think they could happen after each other? My current understanding and my current prediction suggests that we might not continue on this exponential curve. We might just stop here for a while, and that's too bad. But it might happen. We might stagnate based off of if we actually have a war or not. And it's a sincere fear of mine that we would lose what we've attained so far, because we just started hitting the curve. And after that, people will realize something was wrong. It might take hundreds of years. It might take tens of years. It might not happen at all. But how I see it, we might have an end of the world-esque scenario. And that's what people have been predicting happening in the 2040s for prominent futurists have been thinking for about 20, 30 years now. I'll get to you in a second, Fraser. But when it comes to what happens next, we're supposed to have rebuilt. After we rebuild, we enter the singularity. And that's supposed to happen in the 2120s. So, take your time. If you can live that long, make it through the war, you might experience true singularity. But that's my personal speculation. So, Fraser, go ahead. I should lose your train of thought. Sorry.
Dang it.
All right. Well, we'll get back to you if you have any other contributions. No worries. Brad.
Talking about true singularity happening in 2120-ish, what about this whole Kurzweil 2040-ish, 2035?
That's assuming we don't have this digression that was also predicted. And that's the optimistic look of things. But right now, in this time of uncertainty, I have no idea. These are just probability spectrums. Yes, Fraser, you remember. Good.
Yeah, I forgot what I was reading, but there are stages to every empire and stuff like that. And one of the last stages, if not the last stage, one of the last stages is the age of decadence. And I've heard that America has already gone into that age of decadence.
We can afford to do that, though. I don't think the Roman Empire could have afforded to do that. I think we have enough technology where it doesn't particularly matter if 95% of our civilization isn't primary contributors. So they're just secondary contributors to civilization, or their primary job is to maintain the current civilization. And that's mostly what people do. But as long as somebody's working towards something and some systems are continuing to advance, we'll see this exponential growth continue.
Well, also, I have to take into account that a lot of work being done goes beyond borders.
Yeah, a lot of this is international effort, and you'll see that the scientific community has a lot less borders.
So you're talking about humanity as a whole.
Oh, I know.
So, but if it goes beyond America, it still is contributing.
Yes.
The first step
Yes,
of
yes.
decadence would be innovation. Right now, a research paper, the original, what people say, China, India, going with bigger economy, but they are not innovating. Most of the innovations still have.
Well, an economic growth is not a huge indicator of how, GDP's relatively useful to tell how people's standards of living are. That's a good indicator. And economic value is a good indicator of how much stuff they're doing. But a lot of the stuff they're doing might just be like, we need to continue the town halls falling apart. We have to fix that. Having some jobs and some money and some influx of stuff into the system from that will look like economic growth, but that's just economic buoyancy. It's stability. It's just floating there. It's not actually adding anything new to the system. You're maintaining the norm, which is, in an entropic system that we live in, most of what we do is try to just float above, dissipating effectively. Does that make sense? Or maybe I went a little too quantum physics. I tried to stay out of that today.
Without innovation, you'd have to, for the economy to grow, then you'd literally have to increase the population.
Or you'd have to have more systems of production that don't require as many resources, like robotics, which are replacing those positions.
That's innovation.
That's innovation, yes. All right. So does anyone else see any random order of things? I said that the order I saw those events happening were option 1, option 2, and then option 3, which if I want to refresh your memory here, I'll go back here. Option 1, option 2, and option 3. So do you guys see that in any particular order, or that any of them won't occur? The next questions are just about that as well. Do you see anything that just seems completely unlikely or impossible? And is there anything I missed is the last one. So yes, Fraser again, and then we'll go to Brad.
I think it's option 2, option 1, option 2 again, and then option 3.
That's an interesting thought. It seems like you're prone to conflict there.
I think, like you said, that the social construct is huge. You could get to option 2 and have that society if, the large majority of people are all agreeing. I think some of the things we're seeing on social media is you can have a conversation with somebody in Pakistan without a problem. You wouldn't usually be able to do that, or in Saudi Arabia, and you've got very different styles of living.
As soon as people realize people are people, and that the dissonance that they have is just based off of their upbringing,
It is already towards age of abundance. If we see that average lifespan at the end of start of 20th century was 44 years. Now it's about 80 years now. We see that there are so many electricity, the travel, the arts, no, it looks that people are killing each other, but if you see the number of the people that are killing each other compared to when there's no technology, less.
Like Milwaukee's not a great example, though. We've had murder rates that have been going up recently, but we're a first world nation, so we already have pretty low murder rates. It's just astounding when you have them in the situations we're in. But the places that are progressing, where violence has been declining and war has been I would say conflict has been receding in the past years, yes, we're progressing towards a more and more peaceful world. I can see the trends for that as well. And I hope that those continue, but Trump's and some of the other people who have gotten into power internationally, I don't know what Trump thinks. I'm not a politician. I'm not into politics that much. I think that his position is, who knows? He could be lying about everything. He could be picking and choosing of his own positions. So
if you're a Salafist, too, you might be wanting to go backwards. You reject, look at Bin Laden, had a ton of...
Well, there'll always be somebody who finds something great in the old, because there's so much old to pick from. So if you want to pick your philosophy and work with it, you'll have to find some other people that would agree to do that. And when you're in the age of information and people are informed, or they're supposed to be, and they're not in their little bubbles, they'll realize that that is a bubble and that you're creating a human construct to hold them in. So if those trends continue, we'll see a world of war and conflict. But if people open up their bubbles and understand people are people, they have perspectives, they can think differently as long as we're not killing each other or harming each other, then that's good. So, I'm obviously a bit too humanitarian there. Jason, yes. So.
Some internet questions.
Oh, excellent.
The first one is, if robots can be built that are better parents, would it be more moral to let them do most of the parenting?
Well, we haven't discussed morality very much.
Can you repeat that one, though, for the internet?
What was that, Jason?
If robots can be made that are better parents, would it be more moral to let them do most of it?
So if robots could be made better parents, should it be more moral to raise our children by robots? I would say whoever or whatever can do a more efficient, more apt job of conveying what it means to be a good, peaceful, productive human should do the job. Whether or not that's a human, I don't know. What better is, that's subjective. It depends on the civilization that defines what better is at the time. So if you want, people to have to be raised by robots, and it's better to be raised by robots for that society, then it is better. It's defined by you what the better is. Yes. We have more online questions, or?
Yeah, you can.
All right, we'll go back to that. Yes. Go ahead. What's up, Jim?
Well, I think what you're saying is, who determines what's good?
Yes.
I'm thinking right now in this country.
We have that discussion a lot here. What's good? Yeah.
Even in America, if you take a Republican family and a Democratic or independent or whatever kind of family, good people could come up with a completely different product.
Well, yeah, I think that sometimes we all kind of come to these same conclusions that result in a lot of mutual respect and understanding between people. And then we realize how we got to those conclusions. And we're like, hey, I got to my conclusion differently than you did, even though we're here at the same point. That means you're different than me, and I don't like you because I was not raised to accept this. So it doesn't matter if they come to the same conclusion sometimes if they're fighting over how they got there. So that's how I look at it that way. Internet question, yes.
All right. This one's a little bit off topic, but
I'll indulge.
We don't go too long on it. What tech do you think exists that isn't publicly known?
What tech do I think exists that isn't publicly known? I like to think that a person like myself with sufficient access to technology and knowing how to look at things can get any information that I want. But no, absolutely not. There's lots of hidden knowledge. I'm sure the government doesn't tell everyone everything. And if not the government, then private industry for the point of profit alone. They don't want other people to be able to get access to that information or that technology. So absolutely, whatever.
Take a stab at what you think might exist. We don't know.
Well, what? Okay.
Like GPS back in the 80s.
Sure. Radar was hidden from the public and stuff. What I think might exist right now, we probably can teleport stuff, but not a lot. Like sound. I found we might be, I theorize that at this point we should be able to teleport sound. That there's some studies that show that it was possible like 4 years ago. So I'm thinking it was economically viable then. Why isn't it out now? Some of the stuff, a lot of the technologies that I think are hidden. I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist. I don't like to dabble in those types of things because there's no hard facts behind it. I do enjoy just, conceiving what it might mean. But anything could be hidden. If it was crazy enough that the government could hide aliens, I highly doubt that. But if aliens were here and we stole their technology, we're really ahead. Stargate is real. Some nut job answer like that. All right. Any other questions from the audience, Sean?
I want to give you one. Will time travel ever be a thing?
It depends on what time is.
And what direction?
You said that tomorrow.
I can't define time other than the linear path that I'm experiencing. And physics says that it could go either way and it'd be just fine.
Going back into the past and,
What is the past?
disrupting your birth.
Well, we could talk about extra dimensional probabilities and traveling across fifth dimensional strains later. But today is about technology.
That's a
You need technology. You need technology.
I don't think we have dimensional travel yet. Yes.
Do you think we'll ever get off this planet soon and actually colonize another planet?
It depends on how optimistic you are. We could go to Mars right now.
I know.
We could. If everybody just decided to stop fighting over resources and we set aside primary funds and had people who were best apt to making those decisions work on those types of devices, in maybe 6 years we could be colonizing Mars, no problem.
Is Mars better than the moon?
The moon has less gravity, but the moon is a great place to start. So in terms of a backup plan to Earth, terrible idea, just as screwed because they're the same system. But if Earth were destroyed and we colonized Mars, at least humanity would have some sort of secondary backup. We don't have one now. Earth is our only planet. Yes.
Do you think we'll ever be dumb enough to mine the moon?
I don't know why we wouldn't mine the moon.
Like to the point where there's no moon.
Be careful how you do that. All right. How are we doing on time, Fritz?
It is 7:55.
7:55? Well, I was thinking I'd at least talk till 8, but I think we can move around and converse after that. Oh, if you've got one more for me, then I think we have time for that. 6 more minutes.
How does society prepare when it comes to education if jobs are automated? So I guess how does that change?
Well, I still think that, humans training humans is somewhat important, but it depends on whether or not we will need education. Say you actually perfect some form of longevity and you no longer have to worry about educating the next generation. That might not be a concern anymore. But that's super out there. That's really out there. And I think that in terms of current education, what was that again? Ah, man, I always lose the track.
How does all jobs being automated?
How does all jobs change it? Well,
We're not training people to do jobs.
Well, you know what? If all jobs were automated, then people could learn anything they want.
yeah. Well, I still think that if new people were to be introduced in the world, i.e., children, they should have some sort of formal background to kickstart them into existence. Going, here's just how things work, so you don't fall and die in 10 seconds.
We need more and more people in STEM.
Usually, when there's this big of a universe, more people wouldn't hurt. But right now, we're kind of stuck on a rock. Yes.
I like to think there's a difference between teaching and instructing. A lot of the automated stuff is instruction, how to do something, and people who already have the, let's say, capacity to understand can tap in and learn about anything. But as a teacher goes, you need people to help with emotions, help them through the daily things, give them encouragement.
Right, training them. I think teaching involves a lot more than just the process. I agree the social construct that is entailed with that is invaluable to most people, at least. I don't know if that will be true in the future, though. Yes.
Well, I mean, education, especially like university education, is supposed to be about more than just how to do stuff. Like the whole liberal arts side, it's kind of supposed to be about getting you to a place where you can understand and appreciate life.
Yeah, and I think that it is a good clerical background to have. It's great to go learn more. There's no harm in that. So, unless you're being taught things that don't accurately represent the world around you, then I don't like being taught that. That's not teaching. That's anti-teaching or indoctrination. People call it brainwashing, but there's negative connotations to that. So, yes.
Just a comment actually about your that you said that we just started eating the exponent.
Yes.
I actually probably that's the thing with exponent because it depends how you're gonna plot it and how you're gonna blow it up. And I think I would argue that.
Well, it could be argued we have been on the curve the whole time, but we've been hitting the. There's a value that the exponent infinitely approaches on the other axis. We started hitting the point where it's approaching that.
Yeah, well, I would say even this exponent started, if you will.
At the beginning of written history, yes.
Not even that.
No?
If you look at the evolution of life.
Oh, yes, it's been following an exponential trend the whole time. I've heard arguments.
1 million years, we were just cellular organisms, and then, especially I think
that's how I see the entropic system. I was mentioning that earlier, how the whole universe kind of just breaks down. Well, basically what's happening is that these systems of, these higher level systems are breaking down and getting into lower level systems, because that's how entropy works. It goes from higher to lower end, and you have 2 byproducts as a result. And where I'm going with this, crap. Ugh. Exponential, right. Well, and because of that, you get exponential trends and things like that. And that's included in biology, that's included in star development, that's included in most trends that we can observe in current empirical science.
I was going
not
to
last
say.
forever.
Oh, philosophy has some stuff that indicates that too. I'm not the expert on that, but my friend Ruben would gladly give a talk on that, I hope, at some point. Advaita Gita is the ancient Hindu belief that it coincides with my idea of how the singularity will occur. Not to mention my understanding of quantum mechanics suggests that as well. Yes, Fraser.
I just have a question. Could there be other, human organisms? Yeah, could there be other humans somewhere else? And then
It depends on where you mean.
I don't know, like another galaxy or something like that.
Sure. Why not?
Because
I don't know.
you know that life, it could happen, but I'm thinking
There's statistics for that. And they've been getting more and more filled in as we've gathered more data about exoplanets, Earth 2 and the like. Yes.
us or human-like.
Well, I mean, the environment exists here, and it seems pretty stable. And we've seen plenty of other places that could easily have those stable environments. There's no reason to believe that DNA-based life form is unique to this planet. No. I mean, there's plenty of other life forms that could exist too, but yes, I gotta wrap it up, guys, unfortunately.
What were you saying?
Actually, I was going to say that the exponent you were talking about
Mhm.
and the one I mentioned, about the evolution of life.
Yeah.
I would argue it's the same curve, essentially how they.
I think they coincide. I absolutely do, and it has to do with the complexity of the system entirely and how fast it can replicate itself. Yes, indeed. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. I got one more slide for you, where I'll go down to this thing. I'd like to say I'm sorry that my buddy Lawrence couldn't be here. He's usually always here to cheer me on for these things. First one he's missed, but him and I have a YouTube channel, as well as the Mythicists have a YouTube channel. I believe this is where they'll be posting that. So please check that out. We got over 1,000 subscribers by the end of last year, so we're doing pretty good. They're doing pretty good as well. Happy to work with them. And you can stay for a while. Don't worry about that. But I think Sean will wrap it up for the evening. Thanks for hearing me talk for about an hour.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming. Chris Shea-Kurek, great job. Another round of applause for that man. So again, this is a Tuesday night. We do discussions, we do presentations, we do remote presentations sometimes. So if anyone wants to do this, just let one of us know. Again, Mythicist Milwaukee, we're making movies, podcasts, bringing a huge conference to Pabst in Milwaukee. A huge set list for that. So check that out. Otherwise, if you're not a member, help us. Paying for the space, paying for all this equipment is very expensive. So hopefully you can become a member, $75 a year or $8 a month. So again, Chris, thank you very much, and keep an eye out for our next secular talk. Thank you.
Awesome. That's it. Thank you, everyone. Great job, Adam. And Jason. And Grace.
Good job, Chris. Thank you.
Hey, man, what's up? Hey, I paid my phone bill. Half my friends are out of town, so I don't even bother.
Oh, really?
Well, I'd usually care, but nobody.